If I do verbatim, I'll do that too.
Rodney, you about ready?
Ready.
City Clerk, would you call the roll?
Alderman Wilson.
Here.
Alderman Holmes.
Here.
Alderman Tindem.
Here.
Alderman Grover. Here. Alderman Rainey. Here. Alderman Burris. Alderman Fisk. Alderman Braithwaite. Here. Alderman Nguyen. Here. 9-0.
We have a quorum. Welcome to the Monday, February 11th, 2013 meeting of the Evanston City Council. First item on the agenda is Mayor's public comments, and or public announcements, and I do not have any. Assistant City Manager Lyons, do you have any?
I have no announcements.
City Clerk, do you have communications for us?
I have no communications.
Moving right along to citizen comment. The first speaker is Junad Rizki. You have 3 minutes, and Junad, please give your address.
2784 Sheridan.
Thank you.
I'm going to speak to agenda topic 77, SP1, the report on water sales. I'd like to see a little truth about the real situation of the entire water and sewer system under the streets of this city. That is, over half of this system is 100 years old, which has a replacement cost of probably well over $300 million. This dwarfs the police and fire pension problem. The city currently spends about $3 million a year on capital. At that rate, the city will replace the needed system within 100 years. I assume some of you are aware of this problem because the water lines in your wards continue to break. The best example recently is on Central Street, where the line broke 13 times and had to be replaced with emergency capital. I want to really discuss how the city has not done its job with this. Item 1, the city takes $3 million every year out of the water fund and uses it for the general fund. Number 2, the city has recently approved new building projects which will connect into 100-year-old water lines. The apartments on Emerson Street, Trader Joe's, and the new office building in the TIF will all connect into 100-year-old water lines. It also was interesting at the last council where the city wants a developer to spend $1 million to fix the street when the water line under the street needs replaced and will not be fixed. Staff knowingly approves projects possibly with inadequate fire flows. That is, there may not be enough water to fight a fire. Item 4, other items are continually added to water bills that take away from the ability to have capital. Item 5, given the lack of what I would call a clear, sound capital program, some poorly executed projects, and other projects that don't seem to work, I believe 10% of our funds are never used properly. Let's assume for a minute the city could execute a $300 million capital project over 20 years. Water bills would increase 3 to 4 times. That is, a $200 bill might approach $600 every 2 months. So tonight, as Wally's not here tonight, so I guess as the staff presents their latest comments on this selling water, understand where the capital will come from. When you don't have capital to fix your problems you have at hand, how are you going to create a scheme to sell more water to people? And one last thing that I've seen going on here that I will say, this council should not authorize the city manager to go off and negotiate anything and then come back to the council and approve it. The council's been approving his ability to negotiate things and not really sitting here. He should be coming to council with the full deal in front of us, and then that should be done, and not these negotiations where you've pre-approved what he's doing. Thank you.
Thank you. The next speakers are Dan Joseph, Gloria Nance, B.K. Rayo, and Padma Rayo.
I am Dan Joseph of 1510 Greenwood in Evanston. Thank you, Mayor and Council, for letting me address you. I want to speak about the lack of amenities at the Davis Metro Station. I have made some Xeroxes to pass out concerning the station, and one you'll notice, there are no benches on the inbound platform. People have to stand. It is the only place on an inbound platform in all of Metra that does not have benches. I'm hoping the mayor or the city council could assign somebody to communicate with Metra about getting benches. The second part is the lack of a warm place to wait anytime other than Monday and Friday before, after 1:30 in the afternoon. Many Metro stations have a waiting room open 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, including a part in Wilmette and a new station at Cicero and Grand Avenue. Even though there's no trains on weekends, you can still warm up at the shelters. Metro publicizes that the north waiting room is open to 10 o'clock at night. It is not open at all. North Shore Cab used to be there. It's not there now. The place is abandoned. It's heated. Nobody can use it. I'm hoping that the city council and the mayor would be willing to assign somebody to communicate with Metra so we have a place warm to stay other than Monday through Friday between 5 and 1:30 in the afternoon. Thank you. And if anybody asks questions, I've ridden around on my bicycle to other stations and looked what they have, and Davis is pretty awful compared to the rest. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm Gloria Nance, and I live at 1325 Dewey in the second ward.
Excuse me, Ms. Nance. Alderman Rainey, did
I'll
you?
wait.
Okay, I'm sorry. Go right ahead.
We have questions as a family regarding my great nephew, Javar Bamberg. And we feel that the family was not notified in the proper manner regarding his death. Well, we call it a murder or more like an assassination. His mother and father have went to the police station trying to find out what happened. He was said that he was killed at 2 o'clock in the morning, yet his mother, which is only a block and a half away, was not notified until 7 o'clock a.m. And we're wanting to know what happened to his remains during 5 hours before she was notified. Although other people outside were notified, she didn't know anything, or his father. And how was he transported to the medical examiner, and his news of his death, his age, his name were on the internet before noon that day, yet they didn't get to go identify him until several days later. They said his body was not ready for viewing. We want to know who picked him up, who came to the scene, how did they know he was in the alley? She was not told anything, or his father. They're treated like nothing happened. Javar was a wonderful, great nephew to me. He was a father, a son, a brother, a grandson, great-grandson, and a nephew, an uncle to people. He was very much loved, and we feel that he was not treated properly, and we're not happy about it at all. He was not just an animal found in an alley. He was a much-loved member of our family, and we're still hurt. He will always be loved by us.
I am very sorry for your loss, and I did ask the police to meet. I think that they did meet with Mr. Bamberg at some point.
Is John here? Lisa, did he meet with, do you know if he met with John? No.
The police chief can answer that.
And he lived on about a block and a half of where he was found in an alley.
I know. I'm very sorry.
Yeah, it's terrible the way that it was handled by the whoever came, the police. I don't know who came. They went over to once. As soon as they were notified that he was killed, it was really an assassination. But when they got there, his body wasn't there. Nobody saw any blood or anything. He was gone. And what's the name of the truck that was there? Norfax or something?
Nortax.
Shouldn't a paramedic have been called?
Would you like the chief to answer?
Shouldn't a paramedic have been called?
Yes, ma'am.
Well, he was not transported, and I thought it was, I don't know, I've heard that Evanston doesn't have protocol, but shouldn't a paramedic have been called, and shouldn't he have been taken to the hospital to be pronounced dead, and shouldn't his family, his mother and father and grandparents, if nobody else, shouldn't they have been there to see him and not wait? His brother was in Lebanon. His brother was in Lebanon on a study trip for his college, Morehouse College. He didn't know anything about it, but it was all in the paper. Javar Bamberg, age 23, found in an alley.
Yes, ma'am. Let me see if I can address some of these questions.
Okay.
First of all, I'd like to echo Her Honor's expression of sympathy to the family. Some of these topics I have covered extensively at the last Fifth Ward meeting. I've had conversations with Mr. and Mrs. Henry, the grandparents of Javar. The concept that a paramedic wasn't called is incorrect. There's a fire department report where we do what we call run a strip. There's a check on the person to make sure of their medical status. Unfortunately, with the wounds that Javar received, there was no, the strip was flat. And so the fire department communicated that strip to the hospital wirelessly, and a doctor at the hospital pronounced him dead. The police officers don't do that. We always call for assistance. So I want to dispel that notion that we did not call for the appropriate medical attention. As to conversations with the family, Sergeant Glue and Detective Levy have had conversation with John Bamberg Sr. in excess of an hour, and we have requested that John Bamberg Sr. bring us a cell phone that he discovered in his son's effects that may help us to a resolution in this case. Further, Victim Services has been in contact with John Bamberg Sr. Regarding the filing of victim compensation paperwork. To our knowledge, according to Mr. Bamberg Sr., that's been filed and mailed to the state. So while this is a difficult case that we continue to work on, I am confident we'll have a resolution in it. And again, I am sorry for the family's loss, but homicide cases take a while to put together, and we're still diligently working on it. Thank you for the time,
Thank you,
Your Honor.
Chief. Alderman Rainey.
I just wanted to make sure that we made reference for the gentleman who talked about the station. I just didn't want that to just lay there.
Our acting city manager has that under control. Thank you, Alderman Rainey. And I believe Matt Swinkowski, who passed out the
Right.
pamphlets, would be the appropriate person. Padma Rao, would you?
Oh, God, I hope she doesn't talk about me.
My mother was unable to attend the meeting tonight. She gave me her written comments to read into the record. Her name is B.K. Rao of 2246 Sherman. Her comments are as follows. My comments were approved by my attorney. My opinions are based on facts and observations, so there should be no interruptions no matter who claims to run the meeting. Fact. The Evanston Patch published that the first ward person was overheard assuring the Kendall developer's lawyer that the Kendall project would be pushed through no matter what taxpayers say. I submit that this implies that the votes were obtained outside public view. No discussion about killing 24 trees took place.
Ms.
So I
Rao,
submit
you
the
are out of
council
order.
approved.
We've been over this for 2
You
years.
are out of order. We have not been over anything. We are allowed to reject your whitewash of matters. The Evanston Patch, in fact, published this. That is a fact. No discussion about killing 24 trees took place, so I submit the council approved the project thoughtlessly. Fact, the Kendall developer, through his lawyer, wrote to the city that he hired Holland and Knight to sue the city if he didn't get his way. Fact, the same Holland and Knight represented the city at considerable taxpayer expense. Fact, the same Holland and Knight is the employer of the first ward person's son. I submit that one does not need to be a lawyer to figure out a reason why these glaring conflicts of interest were ignored by the city. Fact, the mayor interrupted us several times, argued with us, ate away our speaking time, and even turned off our microphone at the mention of Kendall or Holland and Knight. I submit that this suggests the council does not want the truth to come out about the Kendall matter. Fact, the council has a person from the 8th Ward who spent large amounts of taxpayers' money on her wine and cheese bar known as Ward 8. She antagonized Veolia and Ms. Davies, who both took the city to court, which will burden taxpayers with the costs of litigation that I submit could have been avoided if the 8th Ward person refrained from making foolish and conceivably illegal utterances. I submit that with such a report card, you should all be ashamed of your performance. Protecting the Kendall trees and showing respect for the taxpayers could give you some redemption. I shall return. That concludes my mother's comments.
Ms. Rao, as I have said for 6 straight months, and I thought we were clear on this,
you don't have the right to interfere with public comment. You may run the meeting. It does not mean that you content-based and speaker. The state laws are subordinate to the First Amendment.
I do have the right to ask that redundant comment
no, you do not.
Be made. Yes,
that is content-based discrimination. Judge Shader in Vergara versus City of Waukegan made it extremely clear that you are facing personal liability in addition to bringing liability upon the city for interfering and discriminating against people for the content and for the speaker.
You are not allowed to repeat the same remarks over and over again for 2 years.
Show me where it says that in any law. It's called the First Amendment. You are allowed to repeat, you are allowed to petition for redress.
Please go ahead with your remarks.
And don't interrupt. Padma Rao, 2246 Sherman. My comments were approved by my attorney. At your January 28th meeting, I cited the U.S. Supreme Court opinions in Snyder v. Phelps and Brown v. Entertainment Merchants Association that content-based and speaker-based discrimination are unconstitutional and that government is forbidden from forcing taxpayers to accept its views. The First Amendment guarantees every person's right to object to government actions and to reject government's claims. Yet your mayor interrupted me and tried to force taxpayers to accept her agent's whitewash. I submit that such action suggests intense ignorance or abysmal arrogance or both, none of which are proper in public office. I submit that taxpayers deserve to hear the truth, not a cover-up. We object to this council's vote at Kendall to sentence over 24 mature trees to death for no reason and to endanger pedestrians with an alley that dumps traffic onto the narrowest street. The public record includes a letter from the Kendall developer's lawyer stating that Holland and Knight was hired to sue the city. The public record shows that Holland and Knight was paid tens of thousands of tax dollars to represent the city. Illinois Supreme Court rules of professional conduct forbid a law firm from representing against its current or former client. But this council failed to protect taxpayers' interests and money. The public record shows that your First Ward member's son works for Holland and Knight. The Evanston Patch reported that your First Ward member was overheard assuring the developer's lawyer that your vote would be pushed through. No, the Evanston Patch reported it. If you want to disprove that, fine, go ahead. The Evanston Patch reported that your First Ward member was overheard assuring the developer's lawyer that your vote would be pushed through no matter what taxpayers say. You voted without discussing taxpayers' concerns or the city code's requirements for both tree protection and traffic safety. In Nevada Commission on Ethics v. Kerrigan, the U.S. Supreme Court held that when a council member's campaign manager was a paid consultant on a project, that council member was forbidden from both advocating for and voting on the matter. The High Court condemned such actions as illegal. I submit that your First Ward member's advocacy and vote for the Kendall project when her son's law firm was hired by the developer is equally illegal.
You are out of
order. It's based on the Supreme Court.
This has
It's a
all
Supreme Court
been
decision.
truth.
I further submit that your mayor's agent's whitewash cannot overturn Supreme Court decisions. Your 8th Ward member recorded her animus against Veolia in your video for ANPW on August 8, 2011. Veolia cited your 8th Ward member's words as grounds for suing the city. On January 14th, your lawyer
again.
For what? For stating facts? This is in the public record. It's in the public record. Anyone can watch the video.
It is in the public record.
Veolia
that the
cited your 8th Ward
suit
member's
has
words
nothing to do
as
with the
grounds
8th
for
Ward
suing
member.
the city. On January 14th, your lawyer mischaracterized as allegations what are, in fact, the declarations of a public official recorded in the public record. Your lawyer had claimed that a prank Twitter account was incontrovertible proof of wrongdoing by the prank's victim, but competent lawyers said it's worthless hearsay. I submit that by its own actions, your law department destroyed its credibility beyond any hope of rehabilitation. Wake up and obey the Constitution. Stop violating taxpayers' right to call government to account. Protect the trees at Kendall. They're our oldest neighbors, and they give us clean air to breathe. Protect the Kendall trees and obey the Constitution.
Next is Junad Risky and Faye Kaiser.
I'm going to speak on free speech, too, because 2 council meetings ago I was interrupted during public comment, too. And my issue is not the fact that I was interrupted. My issue really is the fact, as the previous speaker said, someone is really trying to limit my public comment and free speech. I would refer the mayor and council to a letter sent to the mayor and city council of Auburn, New York, by the New York American Civil Liberties Union, outlining really similar behaviors by that city council to deny citizens their right to public comment. Essentially, Mr. Green has a copy of the letter and can distribute to you electronically, but essentially the bottom line, the mayor cannot limit what speakers say during citizen comment. I do also have another statement. There's actually a memo that was sent by the junior city attorney here, Mr. Ken Cox, to Mr. Farrar that actually was published on a local website quite recently, dated May 7th, 2010, on this unsolicited newspapers and comments and all this. And let me read just one small paragraph the junior city attorney wrote. He said, free speech is protected by the First Amendment to the U.S. Constitution. Generally, the government, including the city, may not restrict speech, but a government body may impose reasonable restrictions on the time, place, and manner of the free speech if the restrictions are content neutral and narrowly tailored to serve a significant government interest and leave open ample alternate channels of communication. The junior city attorney appears to understand you cannot limit free speech, so I don't understand why the rest of the legal staff doesn't understand that. The so-called RAW rule that was created here by the city limits their free speech, and that clearly violates their free speech. And I think that's basically what the city has done here is basically created legal documents and legal things that are not within the law, basically, as the RAWs keep saying. But my issue, though, the mayor did interrupt me. And when I claimed staff was incompetent because a project went from $600,000 to $1.7 million, no intelligent person would call that competent stewardship of city funds. And I think the council agreed with that when the council voted the project down. So, I mean, frankly, citizens have a legitimate right to free speech. So, and I would also say that, frankly, this council also some months ago was faced with some restructuring of this citizen comment, and it wisely chose not to do that. So I would hope the council in the future will understand this. Whether the council likes what speakers are saying here, the council really it cannot be interrupted, or the city will face lawsuits. Thank you.
Thank you. Faye Kaiser.
Hi, everybody. I just want to, very brief comment. I wasn't here at the last meeting. This is about the Piven proposal, and I would urge you to reread the packet that I sent you because supposedly things are moving along between Wally and the Pivens. And at the last meeting, a question was asked, and Wally referred it to Maggie Weiss and Val. The question, I believe, was, are the tenants involved in the process? I believe that was the question. And Maggie and Val said, yep. if I would have been there, I would have said, it is very true, Wally is meeting with us, and so is Doug, but nothing is ever discussed. We tenants have been kept completely on the outside of this. We have not been included in anything that is going on with Wally and the Pivens. The Pivens do not come to any of the meetings, even though they are tenants at the building. And we're shut out. And if I understand correctly what was in the Evanston Review, there was an article that we tenants will not be included in any proposals until it has been presented to you, and then if we have a problem with it, then we can discuss it. So I just wanted to let you know that I still have the same issues I had before, and I want you to think about the fact that if the Pivens take over half of the Noyes Cultural Arts Center and do not pay rent, who's going to pick up the extra slack? There are going to be less diverse groups at the Piven, at the center. There are no Hispanics being represented. Besides from my studio and the lady who is next to me, who happens to be African American, there are really no other minorities being represented at the Noyes. And since I've been there almost 30 years, I went there because it was a building that represented all diverse groups. People that could not afford to take lessons should be able to come to the center and take lessons. And I urge you to remember what the Noyes Community Center stood for. A collective building that catered to people of different, diverse backgrounds, different artists, different categories. There are no dance studios there anymore. Fleetwood Jourdain is the only collective black group that is there, and I do understand that unless they are going to be provided a space, that this proposal will not move forward. But you must see...
Ms. Kaiser, I need you to wrap up, please.
You must see that if they take over half of the building, who's going to pay for that rent? They're not paying rent. They will not pay rent. And what happens to all those empty studios that could be rented to Native Americans, to Spanish, to Australian, to whomever? Thank you. I will be back next week. Ta-da!
That is a beautiful conclusion to citizen comment. Thank you. Acting City Manager, could we have a report on wholesale water sales?
Yes, Madam Mayor. Tonight we have a report from Utilities Director Dave Stonebeck on an update as to where we're at in our water sale process. Mr. Stonebeck?
Good evening, Madam Mayor, Alderman, City Clerk, and Assistant City Manager. I'm here tonight to give you an update on the wholesale water sales. I last spoke to you on March 19th, 2012, and I'd like to give you a short update at this time. This slide indicates the communities that we currently provide water to, the Village of Skokie, as well as the Northwest Water Commission, comprised of Buffalo Grove, Wheeling, Palatine, and Arlington Heights. In April 2012, the City Council approved the City Manager entering into memorandums of understanding with 6 other agencies or municipalities to study the potential of a transmission main to provide water to the western communities. This map indicates the different communities that are involved. Lincolnwood, Niles, Park Ridge, and Des Plaines are 4 individual municipalities, and then the other 6 are all part of the Northwest Suburban Municipal Joint Action Water Authority, which I'm going to call NIMSI Jawa from here on out. We contracted with MWH Americas for the transmission main study. It was completed in December 2012. The 7 partners were involved, and each member paid $21,400 for the study to be completed. A copy of the study is available on the city's website at the location indicated on this slide. The study investigated 4 different potential routes, a north alignment versus a south alignment, and that's critical. The north alignment would parallel the current Northwest Water Commission's route and allow for easy interconnects between that main and the new one, and also the Northwest Water Commission's reservoir is on the north side of the Chicago as well. The south alignment would favor all the other municipalities. They currently receive their water from the city of Chicago at their southern border with Chicago, so the southern route favors that. We also looked at an open cut method of installation, which would require smaller diameter, which would be the scenario if Nimsi Jawa wasn't involved, those 7 communities, and if they are involved, then the size of the pipe becomes so large that it would have to be constructed by tunnel. The study also established the water supply demands for each partner, obtained a cost estimate for each route, and then allocated those costs to the different municipalities. Just real quickly going through this is a map showing the north route. For open cut construction, it would involve 54 or 60-inch diameter main. It is basically along Goff Road. There is a jog that takes it around the Goff Mill Shopping Center that was requested by the municipalities out in that area to avoid heavy construction there. This route is the south route for open cut construction. Again, it's a 54 or 60-inch transmission main. And you can see that in this scenario, the distance from the transmission main to where the receiving reservoirs are is much closer, and so it's a lot less expensive for those communities to connect. But then there's a really long pipeline that goes up to where the Northwest Water Commission current reservoir is. So that's the difference in the north and the south routes. This next route is the proposed north tunnel route. So if Nimsi Jawa was involved, one potential tunnel route is basically the tunnel follows the North Shore Canal to Goff Road and then goes due west on Goff Road. This would be a 90 or 96-inch diameter transmission main. This is the proposed route for the southern tunnel. Again, the tunnel follows the North Shore Canal to Oakton Street and then follows Oakton Street west. So those were the 4 routes that were looked at. One important factor on this is that at this time it is assumed that the partners that want to participate in receiving water would actually pay for the transmission main. That's not a cost that the city of Evanston is looking to borne, at least at this time.
Good news. Keep looking at it that way.
The transmission main has to be designed for maximum day demands. So although Lincolnwood only averages about 2.5 million gallons a day, their peaking factor would be 4.4 million gallons during the real hot summer months when there's a drought going on. And if there's a drought in Lincolnwood, it's probably a drought in all the areas that we're looking to provide. So you have to build the tunnel or the pipeline for that size demand. The Northwest Water Commission actually asked for 2 different demands. The 26 million gallon would be if it was constructed by open cut construction, and that would provide them their average day demand. However, if the tunnel was built in a larger pipe, then they asked for 80 million gallons under the belief that they might attract other municipalities to purchase water from them. And so that's why there's 2 different demands for the Northwest Water Commission shown. Okay, and I'm not sure why I can't go anywhere here now.
Alderman Rainey.
Dave, were it an open cut or a tunnel, would it matter where, would it all be located in the same space? In other words, are we going to go down the middle of a road, along, under a sidewalk? Where?
It would have to go where the utilities would allow us to go. Generally,
But where would that be?
it would, if it's open cut, it would go on, not in the center of the street. It would favor one side or the other. Where the water main isn't, so in at least in Evanston, the combined sewer is in the center of the street, and the water main's either on the north or the south side. It would go on the side where the water main wasn't. That has yet to be determined. It wasn't looked at that detailed yet. There we go. So this is the cost for the transmission main, and it is a staggering large price. Please don't be afraid of it right now. The top row indicates the cost of building the transmission main, and then the rows below that indicate the cost for each community to build the connection from the transmission main to their community. An important factor on this is if I'm Niles or one of the other smaller communities, the cost for the northern route is it costs that community, Niles, $13 million to build the main from the transmission main to the receiving, where if they go with the southern route, the cost is only $5 million. So that's why a lot of these municipalities are favoring the southern route. Alternatively, though, the Northwest Water Commission has the difference is there. They're only $2 million if it's a northern route, but it's $47 million if it's a southern route. So we're dealing with different entities here that have different preferences. So then the cost allocation to each community is based on two major factors. What is their maximum day demand, and then how far are they from the city of Evanston in miles? So those two factors together are multiplied and then given a percentage of the total cost. So this is for each municipality what their portion of the transmission main cost would be. And this method of allocating costs is determined to be the most equitable. So as this slide indicates, Des Plaines would have to pay 27% of a transmission main that was installed if NIMSI-Jawa was not involved, whereas if still using the same southern route, if the NIMSI-Jawa was involved and a tunnel was constructed, their cost of the main would only be 8%. So the cost difference to them is significant. It saves them almost $21 million in constructing the transmission main if NIMSI-Jawa is involved. So that's a big consideration to be taken into when we do that, and that'll come again as we discuss it later. One of the things that we did to break this big cost down to make it more user-friendly in a way was we based on what the average daily demand for each community was, and then their cost for borrowing money on a 20-year bond at a 5% interest rate, and then based on how much water they sold, they would need to charge these rates to get the debt service amount needed to pay annually. So for Niles, they have a cost of $8.5 million for their tunnel portion, and then they have another cost of $5.5 million for the connection from the tunnel to the reservoir. So that's a total of $13.9 million. So if they were to sell a bond for $13.9 million and they did it for 20 years with a 5% interest, their annual debt service would be $1,117,000. But they take 5.1 million gallons a day, and if you break that down to 1,000 gallons, their residents would have to pay 60 cents per 1,000 gallons to pay off the debt service for that new transmission main. And when you compare that to Chicago charging in 2015 $3.82 per 1,000 gallons, that gives a lot of wiggle room to purchase. They can construct a main, and Evanston could still sell them water for less than that, and when you add the two together, it could still be less than $3.82, which is why this is all feasible. That's what this transmission main study demonstrated to those municipalities, that this is still a feasible thing to pursue. The treatment plant expansion, we're currently rated 108 million gallons a day. We're currently investigating different methods of expanding the plant, and all those factors are still being weighed in. If NIMSI-Jawa does not participate and purchase water from us, we believe we would have to expand the plant to 132 million gallons a day capacity. If NIMSI-Jawa is involved, we believe we'd have to expand the plant to 214 million gallon a day capacity, or nearly double what we do now, because they're a very large organization. So the cost to expand the treatment plant, this is where Evanston would get involved. It's proposed that Evanston would sell revenue bonds to pay for the expansion of the treatment plant. Evanston would only go into that is if we had signed contracts with the municipalities indicating that they were going to purchase from us, and it would be more or less a guaranteed, a take-and-pay type of contract. So even if they didn't take a drop of water, they would have to pay what was in the contract, a certain amount, so that we wouldn't lose money by selling the bonds. It would cover our debt service.
Alderman Rainey, excuse me, Dave has a question.
Would the new water users pay for the expansion of our water plant?
And I'll get into that when we talk about the rate in just a minute, but if we put something in that has a life of 20 years, they would pay their fair share of that asset over 20 years. So 20 years from then, it would be paid off for. So let's just say Nimsy Jawa joined and they took 50% of the water. Whatever we built, $5 million something, and it had a 20-year life, they would pay 50% of it over 20 years. And then the rest of the municipalities would pay their appropriate portion over that 20-year period as well.
But Evanston water users wouldn't see an increase, any real increase based on expanding water service to other communities?
We don't believe so, no. That's the benefit of the rate. And again, I'll get to that in a slide or two. So again, this is what I just talked about. Appropriate rates would be charged to new wholesale water customers to recover the capital costs. That's the expansion of the treatment plant. And then one of the other factors is the operation and maintenance costs. They would have to reimburse us for that as well. And then right now, again, we don't have any rate specifically in mind, and when we do decide what the appropriate rate would be, we'd have to bring that back to the City Council. We are proposing to establish rates in accordance with the American Water Works Association. They have a manual out called the M1 manual, which is the principles of water rates, fees, and charges. We're looking at the utility approach, which sets up two parts, a demand charge and a quantity charge. The demand charge actually has two parts of it. One is the fair value rate base. And so you have an original cost. So if we were to build new facilities, that's the original cost that goes into that. And then you subtract depreciation away from it. And then there's a reproduction cost, because as the infrastructure gets older, it becomes more expensive to replace it than what the original cost was. So you put those two together, and so all your assets are added up. What's the total value of all the assets at the water plant? What was the original cost? What's the reproduction cost? And there's a 50-50 split to that. So when something's brand new, the owner wants everything to be designed on the original cost factor. When everything's really old, the owner wants it to be based on the reproduction costs, so it's much higher. So what they do is you get both costs and you average them together. That's that 50-50 split. And then you have an 8% return on rate. That return on rate is what covers. If we say 8%, let's say we sell bonds for 4%, well, yeah, that's that 4% that we got to pay off. But then there's another 4% that's basically the municipality that took the risk of building on that. And that's your return on rate, and that's what you can realize by doing this work. Another element of the utility approach basis is that it allows government-owned utilities to make payments to the general fund of the municipality as well. So that's all something that's all allowed in the AWWA rate base setting it up. So the utility approach also allows to have a depreciation charge. So the assets depreciate even though you maintain it. A pump that runs well and it's maintained well is still not at its full value 20 years later than what it was at the time you put it in. So the depreciation charge is an important charge as well. Part two of this is a quantity charge. This is how we get back to covering our operation and maintenance costs. So it's a payment based on the quantity of water delivered to each of the different new customers. and then the rate is based on the appropriate share of our operating costs. So again, somebody that took 50% of the water that we produced would wind up paying 50% of the O&M charges. So as we add more wholesale customers, the percentage of water that Evanston customers use gets smaller and smaller, and then our portion of all this is smaller and becomes really insignificant when we look at it that way. So conclusions of our study was Lincolnwood does not want to participate in any type of an agreement with all these other municipalities. We had separately performed a study to provide water directly to Lincolnwood, and the cost of having that pipeline constructed was cheaper than them participating in the cost of a tunnel or an open cut with the other municipalities, and it's a direct route to the receiving point. So we've already begun negotiations with Lincolnwood, and we hope to have a contract with them hopefully maybe by June 2013, so within several months. We have to resolve what the Northwest Water Commission is doing. We met with them last week on February 6th. They're still performing their due diligence at looking at how to get more water. They're very interested in expanding what they do. They're just not 100% locked into going with Evanston. They're looking at several different options of potentially getting raw water delivered to their site and maybe partnering with somebody else.
Excuse me, Dave. Alderman Grover, did you have a question?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you, Mr. Director Stoneback. What have been some of the other municipalities' hesitations about undertaking an agreement with us for water supply?
And that's my next comment. The next thing that we have to do is meet with Nimsi Jawa, because when I look at it, if they're in, it's a tunnel and it's a much larger plant expansion than if they don't want to participate. It's open cut construction and a lot less plant expansion. So we're meeting with the Northwest Water, or I'm sorry, the Nimsi Jawa on February 19th. We then plan to set up meetings with the other municipalities. We have gotten phone calls from Niles and Des Plaines, and they're asking us what the next steps are. They're showing interest in pursuing this. And I explained to them, well, I have to really try to figure out what's going on with the big fish to determine how everybody else is going to handle it. Not that Des Plaines or anybody else isn't important to us. It's just that 7 communities as one organization swings how the construction is done, and that's what we're hoping to get a sense from them when we meet with them on February 19th, which would then allow us to go and talk to the other communities and let them know what Nimsi Jawa is talking about and which way we're actually looking at expanding.
It may help to know, Jane, that at the Northwest Municipal Conference legislative brunch, a gentleman from Prospect Heights came up to me and wanted to know what he had to do to buy water from us. So Chicago raising their rates has made me quite popular at these meetings.
Great.
Well, to clarify, that community gets their water from Illinois American, which is a private organization and charges even higher than the city of Chicago does. So I tried to keep it short and sweet, and try to pack a lot of information in quickly.
You did an excellent job. Are there any other questions? Go forth and make us a lot of money, Dave.
Thank you.
Thank you. Alderman Rainey, could we have the consent agenda? What are we at next? Oh, I'm sorry. Wait. Sorry, Ann. Maggie Weiss, we had one last speaker who didn't realize we were starting this early. Is there anyone else for public comments who did not sign up in time? Okay. Go ahead.
Good evening, everybody. Thank you, Madam Mayor, for hearing me out. Some of you remember I am the chair of the Noise Tenants Committee at the Noise Cultural Arts Center that's undergoing some exciting ideas and changes and also nerve-wracking. And I wanted to clarify something that had been brought up at the Human Services meeting because Wally was in discussion with Alderman Fisk and wanted to wanted to know if I needed to speak and to address the issue that Alderman Fisk brought up about whether we were being heard and if we felt we had a seat at the table. And in fact, I think Wally has been very attentive. However, he has not been able to give us any answers whatsoever. Anything about where we might be relocated, those people who would be leaving. No comfort at all about the fact that we've lost 4 large tenants and the fact that Piven is unable to say in any way that we will, in fact, be accommodated in what plans they are coming up with. So it's got us very much ill at ease. So even though we have been heard, we have not been responded to. So I felt that it was important to clarify that because this has been going on for 18 months. It's taken an incredible amount of time and energy from a great variety of individuals. We've submitted subsequent plans to theirs after last spring. The city submitted subsequent plans. Both plans were refused, but no alternative has been produced yet. The other concern I would like to mention is that we will have a tenant who's occupying half the building. So it's disturbing that we are not able to be in communication directly with this tenant, this fellow tenant, while we're undergoing these, or while these changes are being considered. I am friends with Leslie Brown, but ever since the situation became difficult, we've avoided each other, I think because it might maintain our friendship. So I just want you to know that it is very, very tense. And it weighs heavily on the people in the building who aren't related to the performing arts in general and who won't benefit from having a theater. But I also wanted to mention that every person who is a tenant at Noyes Building does community service. In the past, I've worked with Foster School, with the Family Focus after-school programs. I've worked with Lilac Tree. Some of you may know that's an organization in Evanston that benefits women going through divorce and changes in their lives. And I've also done volunteer work with Nichols School in a sewing club for 5 years. So that's only me. And what we're doing by giving up half the building to one tenant is also giving up the the community service for the indefinite period of time, the next 50 years or however long that is managed by one theater company. So the community is losing something intangible that is not measured, that we don't have a file on that I can pass around to you. But I have many pictures that I can share of many minority kids that I have worked with in all these places. Teen moms, after-school teen moms, summer programs with kids who have no place else to go, and plain old after-school program at Nichols School. So I believe this is a loss. And I do believe that Piven expansion can take place in a positive way, and I think it's possible for it to benefit our community. But most people on our committee and most tenants in our building are dismayed because we do not have answers. So some people...
I do need you to wrap up, please.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure that the people who feel that everything is copacetic, I want you to understand that that is not the case right now. And we hope it can be that way, but it is not at present. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. I'm sorry, Alderman Rainey. Now, could we have the consent agenda?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. The first item on the consent agenda is the approval of the minutes of the regular council meeting of July 28. Administration Public Works Committee met this evening and recommend your approval of the addendum regarding payroll and Evanston City bills. And that would be, we request your approval of the bills from FY 2012 in the amount of $897,513.09. The city bills from 2013 in the amount of $943,093.75. Credit card activity for the period ending December 31, $96,753.61. And I believe the payroll is the same. Is that correct? The payroll is the same. The City of Evanston payroll through January 27, 2013, $2,692,151.86. We approved and recommend your approval of the expenditure of the biannual inspection, overhaul, and maintenance of street sweeper 668 in the amount of $23,940.15 by Standard Equipment Company. We ask your approval of a one-year contract extension to Werfs Industries in the amount of $95,000 for the coming year to provide required annual inspection and repair for heavy fire apparatus vehicles. I think that means fire trucks. Next, we ask your approval to authorize the manager to execute a renewal of the service and maintenance agreement with Otis Elevator Corporation for elevators at the service Center and Civic Centers and Maple Avenue and Church Street parking garages at a cost of $67,398.12, effective January 1st, 2013 through December 31st, 2013. No increase is being experienced from last year's fees. We ask your approval also to authorize the manager to execute a renewal of the service and maintenance agreement with ThyssenKrupp Elevator Corporation for the elevators at Sherman Plaza parking garage at a cost of $37,950.24. This is effective January 1 through December 31 of 2013 and provides for a 3% annual increase from last year's fee. We ask your approval also to authorize the manager to execute a renewal of the annual sole source maintenance and support agreement for the term February 21, 2013 through February 20th, 2014 with Azteca Systems, Inc. For City Works work order and service request management software in the amount of $22,405. There's no increase over last year's fee, and this will be paid for out of the Utilities Department and Public Works Department budgets. We ask your approval also to authorize the manager to execute a contract for third-party administration of general and automobile liability and workers' comp claims with Cannon Cochran Management Services for an estimated annual amount of $85,000. Funding is from the insurance fund. Resolution 4R13 is a request that the City Council would authorize payments relating to the 2013 Capital Improvement Plan project expenditures up to $10,039,250 be reimbursed by the subsequent 2013 general obligation bond issuance. This is for action. We ask your approval also for Resolution 10R13, authorizing the manager to sign the local agency agreement with the Illinois Department of Transportation for the preliminary engineering services agreement with Hampton, Lazzoni, and Renwick, Inc. In the amount of $66,049 for the Dempster Street Traffic Signal Modernization and Coordination Project. Funding is from the West Evanston TIF and the Capital Improvement Fund. We ask your approval also to introduce, Ordinance 6013, which amends Title 10, Motor Vehicle and Traffic, Sections 10, 12, 2, providing for the ability to issue city code violations in accordance with the Illinois Vehicle Code. Next, item A7 is off the consent agenda and will be addressed by the committee chair due to amendments. Next, our staff recommends consideration of the following four ordinances: A8 through 11 for lease agreements with resident artists at Noyes Cultural Arts Center for terms in excess of 2 years. All of the ordinances authorize the manager to enter into leases. First is Ordinance 13013, a 5-year renewal agreement with Next Theater Company. 14013 is a 10-year renewal lease agreement with Evanston Children's Choir. 15013 is a 3-year lease agreement with Art Encounter. Ordinance 16013 is a 10-year lease agreement with Actors Gymnasium. For action tonight is Ordinance 17013, which amends the Class P liquor license by increasing the maximum quantity of alcohol permitted for on-site production and storage from 15,000 gallons to 30,000 gallons for 1 year, and another increase of 35,000 gallons annually thereafter. Ordinance 10013 has to do with the sale of surplus property and is for action tonight, authorizing the city manager to publicly offer for sale 3 vehicles owned by the city through public auction. Next, Planning and Development. The Planning and Development Committee concur with the Zoning Board of Appeals and recommend the adoption of Ordinance 11013, granting a special use permit for the operation of a Type 2 restaurant, Starbucks, at 1734 Sherman Avenue. Under Human Services Committee and the Evanston Supervisor recommend council approval of the township bills, payroll, and medical payments for the month of January 2013 in the amount of $90,536.54. Madam Mayor has offered up no appointments for us to consider, and therefore I move the consent agenda.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to pass the consent agenda. Seeing no lights on for further discussion, City Clerk, would you call the roll?
Alderman Wilson.
Aye.
Alderman Holmes.
Aye.
Alderman Tindem.
Aye.
Alderman Grover.
Aye.
Alderman Rainey.
Aye.
Alderman Burris.
Aye.
Alderman Fisk.
Aye.
Alderman Braithwaite.
Aye.
Alderman Nguyen.
Aye.
9-0.
9-0, the consent agenda passes. Alderman Grover, could we have Administration and Public Works? I believe you have one item.
I do. Thank you, Madam Mayor. As to item A7, I move approval, this having already been introduced, of Ordinance 18013, amending Title IX of our City Code regarding solicitation and panhandling, with the following amendment. If you look to page 145 of your packet, the amendment has to do with the time limitations on solicitation. As set forth in the packet, the time limitations are from 9 in the morning until 9 p.m. The committee, it's been amended to limit solicitation under that paragraph 9525B3 from 9 until 6 p.m. to be consistent with the limitations on solicitation on Saturdays.
Second.
Do you follow me?
Sort of.
I can explain in a better way. We've hashed it out in committee, so the committee understands it, but if anyone else. We're looking essentially to panhandling is limited between 9 and 4. Solicitation, which is a different activity, we want to limit from 9 until 6 consistently. Every day, except for Sundays, federal holidays, in which case no panhandling or solicitation.
Okay, I got it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And again, this has been introduced. This is for action with amendments.
It's been moved and seconded. Does anyone want to comment on this? Alderman Rainey.
Madam Mayor, there is also a provision in this for those who haven't had a chance to read it in the community to opt out of panhandling altogether by placing a notice on your door saying that no panhandling is allowed by virtue of this ordinance, permission to do so by this ordinance. And I've suggested that the legal department provide the copy for that and put it on the internet so that people can download it and not have to worry about having the proper wording.
Sounds good. Thank you, Alderman Rainey. All right. Alderman Braithwaite.
I just had a quick question, and maybe this goes to council. I had some time to think about this, and I'm just curious to know if candidates seeking signatures would be included in this ordinance.
That would be panhandling.
That would be panhandling. If that's the case, then I would be a little bit concerned about the time period between 9 and 6, just to throw it out for conversation.
Madam Mayor, members of council, Clerk Green, Grant for our Corporation Council. As currently defined under the ordinance, that would not, that particular activity, Alderman Braithwaite, would not constitute panhandling. And for purposes of solicitation, that would not cover solicitation. And I would also note that that could be considered the act of campaigning and or seeking to obtain signatures for petitions is First Amendment and political speech, which is a separate category than what is currently defined or even contemplated by this particular ordinance. So in a word, I don't think that's covered.
Thank you, City Attorney.
And not restricted.
Thank you, Mr. Farrar. All right, it's been moved and seconded to pass Ordinance 18013, amending Title IX of the City Code regarding soliciting and panhandling. City Clerk, would you call the roll?
Alderman Wilson.
Aye.
Alderman Holmes.
Aye.
Alderman Tindem. Aye. Alderman Grover. Aye. Alderman Rainey. Aye. Alderman Burris. Aye. Alderman Fisk. Aye. Alderman Braithwaite. Aye. Alderman Nguyen. 9-0.
9-0, the motion passes. Alderman Grover, I believe that completes your report. Next we are at Call of the Wards. Alderman Wilson.
No report.
Thank you. Alderman Holmes.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just want to remind everyone that next Thursday, February 21st, is the regular Fifth Ward meeting at Fleetwood Jordan at 7 p.m. and Director Stonebeck from Utilities will be our guest to inform our community about the activities of the Utilities Department. And also just want to express my sympathies to the family of Val Summers, who's the wife of the late Alderman Mike Summers of the Fifth Ward, and her passing of this morning.
Thank you, Alderman. Alderman Tindem.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I just wanted to thank the staff that turned out for the combined 6th and 7th Ward meeting last Thursday. It was a great meeting with a huge variety of discussion topics. I would like to say thank you to Dave Stoneback, Kevin Lucas, Officer Blumenberg, Police Chief Eddington, and Chief Clabber, and Wally. Also Jeff Barbara and Jim Gordon, who were there to support. Thank you.
Thank you. Alderman Grover.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Stealing my cheat sheet. I want to thank Alderman Tender for co-hosting the meeting with me. It was a good time, and we had a surprising number of people come out on a really bad night. I think a third of them probably just walked downstairs from Three Crowns, but it was still a nice turnout, a good meeting. We started on time and ended on time. I want to congratulate a Haven 8th grader, Nora Robinson, who is a high-achieving, excellent student, extraordinary talent, and now all her excellence is being recognized in the African American Achievement Awards next Friday at Evanston Township High School. So congratulations to Ms. Robinson, one of my favorite 8th graders. I've also kind of resolved this year to not be a bystander to bullying. That's one of my resolutions. And I got to tell you, it kind of feels sometimes after 2 years of the same citizen comment remarks over and over again that it's without any, it's relentless and it's repetitive, and it's risen to the level of raised voices and interruptions, and that's not civil discourse. And it's beginning to feel, actually it's felt a long time, and correct me if I'm wrong, as if it amounts to bullying, this kind of behavior. I'm not labeling anybody as a bully, but the behavior feels like bullying to me. And I don't know if you know that over the course of the last couple of years, I've made overtures to Mrs. Rao and Ms. Rao and offered my business card and a telephone number, and tonight I offered my business card again with my phone number on it. And Ms. Rao said, she said, "I don't want to talk to you. Please leave me alone." And I think we all have to wonder what that means if the elected official to whom she is making an appeal, attempting effective advocacy, if she turns me away and says she doesn't want to talk to me, you have to wonder what her purpose is in speaking at every city council meeting and how effective her advocacy is. My offer still stands to talk with Mrs. Rao, her attorney, or Ms. Rao. Doesn't matter to me. I won't even bring my attorney with me because I'm comfortable having these discussions, and I have no doubt it can be civil. Again, I have to say this in the hopes that we can push the reset button at some point on the tone of the discourse from citizen comment, setting an example from the podium ourselves. And I think by my reckoning, and again, correct me if I'm wrong, that this is the third meeting that Mrs. Rao has been unable to attend, and I'm sure we all wish her the best and hope that she is able to join us sometime in the future so that there isn't this suspicion that the statement being read is really not her words, but rather the words of her daughter looking to double up on citizen comment. And I think maybe we're all thinking that way too. So, Mrs. Rao, I hope you're listening, and I hope you'll join us again. And I hope that our discourse, whether in person or in public, can achieve some minimum level of civility and politeness. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Alderman Rainey.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I agree with everything Alderman Grover just said, but moving on. I would like to make a referral to Administration and Public Works. I've spoken about this in the past, and I'm going to ask that it be placed on the next Administration and Public Works agenda, and that is a discussion of the implications of providing for a 5% advantage for bids having to do with projects owned by the city. And the reason I'm doing this and the discussion I want to have is because I know of numerous contractors who were intimidated by that, who are not Evanston contractors, who did everything to be involved in the theater, the Howard Street Theater construction project, but felt they didn't have a chance with the 5% advantage for Evanston contractors. It doesn't always work out that the Evanston contractor would get it, but I think it's sending a message. This is not to say that we should not require on city projects that those participating with the general contractor should not be some Evanston subs. And I think there's a way to make that happen because we certainly have lots of Evanston contractors who are capable of being subs versus being an Evanston contractor, a general contractor on a big job. So that's a referral. Second of all, on a lighter note, Alderman Burris and I attended a city council meeting in Fort Myers Beach, Florida, which is a community of about 4,000. The city council there runs an island. It's an island off Fort Myers proper. And we found that their issues are exactly the same as ours. They talked for about an hour on the matter of a theater sign, a monument sign that was backlit that they did not want backlighted. They had a whole new rule, and it was coming into the time when the grandfather clause was being eliminated. But their big issue there is lights and turtle breeding. So that it just overshadowed everything, the fact that turtles cannot have light. And we took to them City of Evanston pins and 150 pins and our annual report, and they provided us with their pin, and it is a palm trees. So we want to share one with everybody. And we assured them that we were not there on a political junket, that we were just dropped. But they meet all day Monday. They start at 9:30 in the morning and meet all day long. Every Monday? First and third. So we're able to go to our meetings and then to their meetings. It's a really pretty pin.
Oh, it is.
And we were on TV, too. They have a citizen station.
Thank you. Alderman Burris?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. We will be having a 9th Ward meeting next Wednesday, February 20th, at the Levy Center at 7 p.m.
Thank you. Alderman Fisk?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. We were playing with our buttons down here, so I wasn't paying attention. Thank you, Alderman Rainey. Thank you, Alderman Grover, for your comments, and I appreciate them. Yeah, one really has to ask the question. When questions have been asked and answered for 2 years at citizen comment, really by independent boards who have looked into the various issues, and they're found to be baseless. What are we really achieving, and what are we working for? So again, I appreciate that. 2 things that are coming up in the city and that I wanted to remind you of. On Saturday, the 23rd, Human Services and I, as First Ward Alderman, are sponsoring a meeting for everyone who has a dog beach permit or anyone interested in using the dog beach to try to answer a number of questions that have come up over the past 6 months, raising questions about the use of the dog beach. So everyone from Human Services is invited. Yes, everyone from Human Services, and but this is an expanded ward meeting also because the dog beach is in our ward, and we want to try to make that as good a facility, as safe and secure a facility as possible. And then a reminder that the first ward meeting is coming up on Tuesday, March 5th at the library, and I will remind you of that last time as well. So hope to see you all Saturday the 23rd.
Thank you. Alderman Braithwaite?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I, too, would like to thank the city staff. This past Friday, we had a wonderful workshop, Evanston Procurement 101, where our city staff was able to invite Northwestern University, District 202, District 65, Rotary International, and also Brinshaw, and our city staff gave a wonderful presentation just how to increase the business opportunities between our local businesses and the large entities. So I just want to thank Godwin Chen, Dolores Cortez, Michelle Smith, Lou Gertis, Ashley Porter, our assistant Marty Lyons, also our deputy assistant Joe McCrae, as well as Wally Bobkowitz. Carl Bova is here in the audience, and we heard nothing but positive comments about the experience, and we hope to replicate that event in the future. As well, I would like to remind the residents in the Second Ward that we do have a ward meeting, not Wednesday, Valentine's Day, but it will be February 21st at 7 p.m. on the second floor of the District 65 building, starting at 7 o'clock. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Alderman Nguyen?
No report, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Alderman Wilson? No, he's just going to make his report. I'm going to get to you. Let's let Alderman Holmes has another public comment.
I'm sorry. I just wanted to say to the council that on Saturday evening I attended an event at Fleetwood Jourdain sponsored by the Pioneers for Peace, and it was Still I Rise youth open mic, and it was absolutely fantastic to see so many young people there in such a positive setting. They must have had 200 or 300 kids there, and it was absolutely fantastic. And I just really wanted to give a shout out to Justin Blake and Mandy and I can't remember Mandy and Kimberly Frazier and that whole group of young people who started just a little bit after the October meeting, Mayor, that you had sponsored, and they have kept it up. They've been meeting monthly, and they had their first event on Saturday night, so it was really great.
Thank you for telling us. I'm sorry, Alderman Wilson.
Executive session?
Yes. Do you have a motion for us?
I do have a motion pursuant to 5 Illinois compiled statutes, ILCS 120/2A. I move that the City Council convene into executive session to discuss agenda items regarding personnel and minutes. These agenda items are permitted subjects to be considered in executive session and are enumerated exceptions under the Open Meetings Act. These exceptions are 5 ILCS 120/2A, C1, and C21.
Thank you. All in favor, say aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. Congratulations, Mr. Lyons.
Thank you.
Now, get us out of exec session. You can have my name.
Yes?
Yes.